Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So as you guys can tell by the title, today I'm going to be talking about the sexualization of breastfeeding. And before I get into the video, I haven't filmed a video in 12 days. The reason being is because I've been focusing on my exams. My exams are done. Have they been completed well? I don't know. We're waiting for that grade. But honestly, these condensed summer classes were honestly really stressful with everything else I was handling with track and work, but it's done, so I can actually enjoy my summer for about 2 months now. But I also got a new fan, a mini fan. Um, but yeah, so I've been dying to get into this topic. I know I say that about every single topic, but I've honestly been dying to get into why breastfeeding is so sexualized and why it's so normal for people to put such a label of taboo on breastfeeding. And yeah, like I've seen some discourse online, I've seen some discussions, I've seen some things, and I've always wanted to have my input, obviously, by making my own research and just putting a little bit of opinion into it. So we'll be getting into it. Like, why is breastfeeding so sexualized? So I'll be addressing three different parts. So I'll be addressing the part as to why breastfeeding is so stigmatized. I'll also be addressing the part of the sexualization of breastfeeding, and then I'll be talking about the double standards. Obviously, I've made some research, and research is involved, and my opinions are involved as well. Like my own personal takes are also involved in this. So just to start, um, so I looked at why. I'm going to be looking here because this is where I wrote my ideas. But I was making research as to why breastfeeding is so stigmatized and what led to that stigma. Like, what was the reason behind it? And I saw that the strong marketing tactics for infant formulas was what drove and what was part of what led to the stigmatization of breastfeeding. So around the 20th century, when a lot of women started to work for themselves and joining workforce, society wanted to find an alternative way for women to be able to still provide milk for their children. And we obviously, society looked at alternative ways to make that happen, and that was by including by promoting infant formulas for these babies, for these mothers. So that was the alternative way for the babies to be fed. So from that point, infant formulas were aggressively commercialized, and it kind of became the norm. So like it turned around to put an image for marketing, like for the marketing of drinking bottles for infants to become like modern, and breastfeeding became more and more stigmatized and more out of the norm. Um, and I also saw that with my research that in the 20th century, breastfeeding was kind of seen like the norm for lower income families. So people from poorer families usually took the route of breastfeeding. For wealthier families, it was more so like wet nurses, but wet nurses were used before the 20th century. And then around the 20th century, it was more so that's when society started adopting formulas for these infants. So before it was wet nurses, and then it transitioned to formulas, especially in Canada and the U.S. And it was often more seen as more scientific, as cleaner, as proper compared to breastfeeding. So I think that's where the stigma really came from. There may also have been other um, sources or other reasons, but these are what I saw when I did make my research. Um, and something I've been dying to talk about, so it's the sexualization of breastfeeding. So um, I saw with my research that it was the sexualization of breastfeeding and breasts was built around Western societies. So around World War II, when we started having the rise of adult content, when we started having the rise of Playboy around the 1950s, it started attaching that image to breasts with like started being associated with adult sexuality and things like that. So with the normalization of like breasts being associated with adult sexuality, it started being seen more and more as taboo to breastfeed in public. And breasts, so the image of breasts was directly just associated with sexuality. Um, But I do know that many traditions, many cultures, and many indigenous communities still see breast as having that fundamental biological purpose, in that biological function of breastfeeding. Something that did trigger me just a little bit, I did, because I was working on research, I did see a couple articles, like a couple of things here and there. So one of the things that I did see was how women are able to experience, certain sensations with breast sucking of their child. They're also able to experience sexual arousal. I also saw something that went as far as saying that breastfeeding is a sexual experience, and that kind of resonated with me in the wrong way. So I feel like these sentences sexualize breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is a biological function. So it is from mother to infant. It involves breast sucking, obviously, and during breastfeeding, there is the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is associated with the release of milk, whatever. During breastfeeding, it is possible, and it does happen, that some women have experienced sexual arousal, things like that, but it does not make breastfeeding a sexual experience. A sexual experience is the engagement towards a sexual behavior, but breastfeeding is not a sexual behavior. So breastfeeding cannot come from a sexual experience. I feel like these words need to be used very wisely, and seeing articles and sources put breastfeeding as a sexual experience is just dehumanizing, because a sexual experience does involve the engagement of a sexual behavior. But breastfeeding is not a sexual behavior to begin with. And these words just being thrown around. And just because there is sexual arousal for breastfeeding, it does not make it a sexual behavior. It's a normal response. Sexual arousal during the breast sucking of that child is a normal response that the mother, because obviously there's a release of a couple hormones, there's a release of oxytocin. That does not make it a sexual behavior. And I'm going to stand on that. I'm ready to argue. But yes, breastfeeding is not a sexual behavior. It's just been sexualized. And something that I did want to talk about is that we see breasts in advertisement. Most movies we watch nowadays have breasts. We see them in magazines, we see them online, we see them in social media, we see breasts everywhere, right? It's something that's been largely sexualized. We lived in a Western society. We're bound to see it. But as soon as a mother tries to use her breast for the biological function that it has, it becomes a problem. It becomes taboo. It becomes too much. She shouldn't be doing that in public, And I just can't wrap my head around that. So as a society, we are comfortable with the sexualization of breasts. We're comfortable with the sexualization of breastfeeding, but we draw the line. We become really uncomfortable when a mother wants to use her breast for its biological function, for its biological purpose. It's a little odd. Obviously, I'm not a mother. Maybe one day I will be, but I just think that women should feel comfortable. Women should have that space mothers out there should have that space to breastfeed, and shouldn't feel like they need to hide, shouldn't feel like they need to step away in some sort because they feel like they will be sexualized for the biological function that they're doing. Mothers are so strong out there. So it's really saddening that our society has just built this sexual image to the point where mothers out there feel uncomfortable breastfeeding their child in public. I personally think that breastfeeding in public shouldn't be stigmatized. It shouldn't be something taboo. Women should feel comfortable to do it anytime. It's a biological function. They have to. So that's the topic I wanted to speak about. That is the research I did. I didn't go too deep into the research. I kind of went like surface level on this topic. But I do know that in African traditions, breastfeeding is still seen as a very strong biological purpose. Like breastfeeding is done any time of the day, like in different African countries, in different African villages. So yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I think that's probably one of my shortest videos that I've ever made. I made my research today. I came from an exam today, so the research wasn't going to be extensive. If you guys have any topics you guys want me to talk about, you guys can drop in the comments. If you guys want to argue with me in the comments, I have the time of the day. I'm done my summer classes, so I do have more time in my hands to argue, to go back and forth. If there's people out there who do think that um, breastfeeding holds a sexual undertone, argue with me. I'm ready to argue with you. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. I will be making more videos. I'm excited. I will be more consistent now. I have more time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another lifetime.